Okay, let's begin the Brattleboro Planning Commission meeting of July 7th. In case since we're starting 6 minutes late, if we find that 8 o'clock comes, I'm gonna maybe ask, and we're not finished our business, I may ask you all to continue until 8:06. But we'll see, we'll try to get through it all. Let's deal with our organizational meeting before we get into minutes and the agenda items of this meeting. But let's first introduce a new commissioner, Gemma Seymour, who's here to my left. And what should we do, Jim? Should we all introduce ourselves and say a bit?
If you like.
Especially Gemma, introduce yourself. Would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Gemma Seymour. I've been living in Brattleboro for 10 years now, 11 years in Vermont. And I am a newly elected member of Representative Town Meeting, representing District 8. I'm finally, after a decade here, getting more involved in civic activities. I've been involved in a number of community groups, and I've been working with Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity for the past 10 years, as well as organizing the Vermont Vision for a Multicultural Future Conference. I am a dyed-in-the-wool urbanist, originally from New York City. I have also lived in Philadelphia, Seattle, the Los Angeles area, the DC area, and South Jersey in a rural area very much like this. I have been car-free in Brattleboro for the past 4 years now, and I'm looking forward to helping Vermont move forward to the challenges that we are facing in the coming century with climate change drastically changing our environment. And having worked with Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, the concerns of accessibility are also very important to me. And I'm hoping to see Brattleboro grow with prosperity for everyone here. Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome. Thanks for sharing a lot of details. Seems like you'll have a lot to contribute. Lindsay, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Lindsay. I live up off of South Main Street here in Brattleboro for the past 5 years now, I guess. I'm originally from Western Massachusetts. I have a degree in regional planning, and I'm a nonprofit administrator. And there's lots of other stuff about me, but I'll stop there. I can't remember it all anyways.
Commissioners on Zoom, I'll start at the top left. Gary.
Well, thank you, Tom. Gary Stroud, Chair, District 8, Planning Commission, Brattleboro Housing Partnership, also as well, and also under HHAV, one of the people for Vermont People with Lived Experiences, and various other committees. I dare not go down the whole list. I don't know how much time you all have. Looking forward to see where we're going to go in the future with today's climate, what things are going on now, what bills have been signed, see how we're going to go forward with Brattleboro and sustainability and with other issues that are going to be happening down the road.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Sue, our planning director, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sue Fillion. I'm the planning director. I have been the planning director, I think, for 7 years now. 6 or 7 years, I can't remember. I think it's 7. It was 2018. And I've worked for the town since 2009.
Okay. Back to commissioners, John. Oh, and I will say, Gemma, that our another staff person who's usually here isn't Steve Hayes. He's like the planning technician of the department.
Yeah, I gave Steve the night off.
Okay. John?
Hi, my name is John Kalur. I have a home just off of Western Ave, and I've been in Brattleboro a little over 2 years now, came from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm retired, but my career when I had one was first in technology and then in nonprofit management and consulting.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Dan Handy. I also will refrain from going through resume, but Yeah, I suppose been in the area since 1999 and been in Brattleboro since 2003. And suppose my specialty is housing. With that,
Thank you. And Bonnie, can you hear and go ahead?
I can hear. I wish I could see everyone. My name is Bonnie Gervin. I live at Morningside Commons. I'm on many boards, as many of you are. I study landscape architecture, and I'm a garden designer. And glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. And I'm Tom Mosikowski. I've been on the commission since fall of 2018, so I guess very soon after Sue acquired her role. I thought she was an old hand at it when I joined. Now I found out she wasn't. And I've been the chair since 2021. I've been on the Development Review Board a couple years, 2 or 3 years, which has been, pretty useful and a good lens for me to see the other side of the coin of the land use regs, and have given me some ideas for land use reg amendments by seeing them in action, so to speak. I'm on RTM, and I live right downtown off Clark Street in South Main. Any announcements?
No announcements.
I'll just say that since I brought up last meeting under announcements that I expected to have the downtown bike parking project, some proposals and recommendations at this meeting, I'm glad I procrastinated and wasn't ready to do that, because we have a new commissioner who's very interested in bicycling and also getting involved with this project with me. So I think it'll be good to have two commissioner brains involved with it, and Sue also will participate in that, and we'll bring some recs and proposals to y'all hopefully at the next meeting. Okay, let's start our organizational meeting. It's elections, reviewing bylaws, and overview of open meeting law and ethics training. One thing I'll say about positions or elections is that I've always found it kind of odd, maybe in some other boards or organizations, that if a new person becomes chair, then they just take over the meeting, but yet they weren't part of planning the agenda. So if that happens, I think the existing chairperson should just continue with the agenda that they were a part of, and then the new positions will. Although, I don't know, maybe technically, legally, the new roles actually begin right at the election, so maybe despite what I want, that can't happen.
That I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know how that should happen.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
in the absence of knowing, we can say it's effective at the closure of this meeting. So for elections, we'll take nominations for each position: chair, vice chair, and clerk. First I'll say that if anyone needs these positions explained, maybe we should review the bylaws first, come to think of it.
I have it in front of me, so, I'm satisfied looking at it, but if someone else wants to hear it, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, if anyone wants the bylaws, or at least that section of the bylaws reviewed first, then please speak up. But otherwise,
Is Gemma familiar with the bylaws? Are you familiar with them, Gemma? Have you read them already?
I have read through them, yes.
Okay.
all right, thank you, Gary. Okay, so for the positions, there's two ways to do it. If we take nominations, and if there's more than one nomination accepted by the nominee for each position, then we'll have to just do the elections for each position. But if there's just one nomination per position, then we can just vote it all as a slate. So if we just start proceeding with nominations for chair and vice chair and clerk, and then we see how it goes, then we can adjust course based on the nominations that are received and accepted. So I will ask for nominations for chair.
I would nominate you, Tom, to continue as our chair.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. And I don't think from my reading in past years there's any need to accept. It's just if you want to reject it, you can say so. Any other nominations for chair?
I would second your nomination for chair.
Okay. I don't think that seconding is required, but I approve I like the motion of confidence, or whatever we can call it. Any other nominations for chair? Going once, going twice, going thrice? None, okay. Any nominations for vice chair? There has to be at least one.
I nominate myself.
Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair? Going once, going twice, going thrice. It's closed. Any nominations for clerk?
I nominate Dan Handy.
He's been doing such a good, I shouldn't say anything before, I shouldn't discuss before we vote, okay. Any other nominations for clerk? Nope, okay, going once, going, yep, Dan?
Well, I would nominate or suggest, I suppose, anyone to volunteer to become clerk, because that's essentially what I did last time.
Oh, okay.
I'm just suggesting that it's a
Democratic way.
Gemma, would you like to have a rapid ascent in this organization?
I will demur, given that I am brand new.
Okay. Modest.
offering, it's a minor.
Okay.
It's pretty much an honorific title.
Mm-hmm. It's all delegated to Sue and Steve, essentially.
If you consider it an honor,
So
staff does all the work.
Dan, I'm not hearing a refusal of your nomination.
No,
Okay. Well, and I'm not hearing any other nominations. I'm
Well,
not
I
hearing any
do
other
not-
volunteerings either.
I mean, Bonnie would be good. North?
No, thank you.
Right. Lindsay?
Okay. Nominations for clerk, going once, going twice, going, unless those were official nominations, Gary.
They are.
Well, that complicates the voting.
Well, I like to stir up the pot.
Okay, well, let's take the chair and vice chair nominations as a slate and vote on that. So all those in favor of that slate, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
That's,
Aye.
okay. I saw and heard a combination, and that counts for everyone. Great. So for clerk, oh wait, can one person give multiple nominations? Gary nominated Dan, and he nominated two other people.
It would seem like a no, but
I'm not sure.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, Gary, make up your mind, please. Could you make one nomination? Unless the body chooses to.
I'm going to kind of like switch. I'm going to say Bonnie.
Okay.
She declined.
I would not make a very good clerk, I'm very sorry to say.
I beg to differ.
Well, okay, so she refused. Do you have a second nomination, Gary?
Lindsay?
Well, I'm gonna vote for Dan, but that's fine. We can move it ahead and do the voting.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of redoing these nominations. Okay, so is that your one nomination, Gary, after Bonnie refused, or do you have two nominations?
That would be probably it. I mean, we're running out of options here.
Okay, okay. So it's just Lindsay. I guess I didn't go with the original thing, but I mean, we could do.
So it's Dan,
We could,
Lindsay,
okay.
right?
I should go with the original nominations as they were. So Bonnie
Yeah.
rejected, Dan didn't reject, you didn't
I'm
reject.
just being nice.
So let's
about
vote. Let's vote upon Dan and Lindsay.
it. Okay.
Let's go around and I'll ask each commissioner which one they prefer. And I'm going to start with Gary.
Lindsay?
Okay, one for Lindsay. John?
I didn't even hear. Did Dan actually want to do it?
50-50. I think
I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to pass.
Abstain.
Okay, and Bonnie?
Well, I think whoever wants to do it the most, which sounds like maybe Dan.
Okay. And Gemma?
I will cast my vote for Dan Hardy.
Wow, look at that.
Sue, is this something where we need 4 votes in order for the action to be? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if you need 4, I vote for Dan.
Okay. Thank you, John.
That broke the ice. There you go.
And I will as well vote for Dan. And Dan, who do you vote for?
Can I pass also?
Do we have four at
Ken,
this
we have
point?
4 for you.
Yes, you can. All right. Thanks for keeping track of that, Sue. All right, Gary, that was fun. Let's move on
That was
to...
a lot of work for a position that requires
No work?
no work.
Yeah, Gary, you're right. You're raising the budget here.
I will
the town
bring it
budget.
back up with our town attorney and try to remove that position from the bylaws, but prior conversations have said, no, it's in statute and it should stay.
You found a hole, Mary. All right, let's review the bylaws. How would we like to go about this? Sue, are you feeling verbose or?
I will say, nobody sent any suggestions.
Mhm.
I can speak to it.
Including myself, I usually do in past years.
Nobody sent us any suggestions to consider for changes. But I would say if at any point during the year somebody wants to propose a change to the bylaws, we just need to have adequate time for the public to be aware of it. So just a couple of days before meeting. So there's 7 members of the Planning Commission, which means we have a quorum of 4. So even if our membership becomes 6 or 5 over the course of the year, a quorum is still 4. We need 4 people to meet. We need 4 people to vote in favor of any motions. Let's see. Our current meeting time is the first Monday of the month at 6 o'clock. Our meetings go till 8 o'clock. If they're gonna go past that, we require a vote to be taken. So we've been doing that. There's a broad range of powers and duties for the Planning Commission. I'm not gonna go through them all, but the 2 that are kind of the most, what I view as 2 of the most important or pressing roles of the Planning Commission is to prepare the town plan and to prepare land use regulations. The Planning Commission is an advisory board to the Select Board, so while you do hold public hearings, your recommendations go to the Select Board, who has the authority to adopt both the town plan and land use regulations. But as you'll see in the list, their statute has a lot of other powers to the Planning Commission. So it could be code and enforcement procedures, it could be advising the, well, we don't have the DRB, undertaking studies on any number of land use, land development, historic scenic preservation, conservation, energy, those kind of topics. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Let's see, we can hold special meetings at any time, we just need to give warning. We follow open meeting law, which is a part of this agenda, which I'll give a little tutorial on. We ask that if you're not able to attend a meeting that you let myself or the chair know. If you let me know, I'll share it with the chair. There's conflict of interest. Because we're advisory, this doesn't come up very much. I really haven't seen it at the Planning Commission level as you would see it maybe at the Development Review Board. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some ethics training that the state is asking each of you to have, which might in the end up revising this conflict of interest section. So I'm just going to kind of hang on to this now. But basically, you shouldn't have a direct or indirect financial interest in a matter that's before the Planning Commission. I will say, in the past we made decisions, recommendations on land use and and maybe on some housing things, and so some of you might be housing providers. What I would say in those situations is your interest isn't any different than other people who are similar. So it's pretty rare that as a planning commissioner you have kind of those conflicts of interest. But really, if you think that something's a conflict of interest, we can talk about it. We can get some guidance from the town attorney if we need to. Let's see. I think that's about it on the bylaws. Do you have any questions?
I had a quick question, Sue, and I guess with Tom and anyone else who knows, this is something I guess mentioned. I don't know whether they would try to commit the term limits, how long, and how that works, so people better understand.
Yeah.
You know, who might be interested in being on planning commission, and how many people are allowed on the planning commission. What's the amount? Is it 7? Is it 8? Just get a better clarification for that, because that is something I raised up at that last meeting to get a better understanding.
So I believe, so in statute it's a 7-member planning commission. So we have 7 members. You all have terms that are kind of staggered. You can resign from your term at any point if you want, and then that, like, whoever comes in to fill is like finishing out your term. There was another piece I was gonna hit on there.
Term limits.
Term limits. Oh, okay. I think it's in the charter that
9 years.
only you can serve for 9 years. So Tom's at 7.
Coming up on it.
He's got 2 more years that he can serve. At that point, he will not be able to be reappointed to the planning commission. He'd have to wait a year, and then could reapply. So that applies to all the advisory, the boards and committees.
So you keep tabs of that, Sue, or we have to?
No, the town keeps tabs of that.
Okay, you'll just send out a friendly reminder. This is your last term. Okay.
Yep.
Other commissioners, any questions or ideas?
None.
Okay. If anything comes up in future months, feel free to bring it up. Don't have to necessarily wait a whole year to address something on the bylaws. Okay, let's move on to an overview of open meeting law and ethics training.
Sure. So I didn't do a slideshow this year. I can send you some slideshows. They exist either from the Secretary of State or from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. So I'm just going to give you kind of a verbal overview of the open meeting law and parts that might apply to you. So Act 133 is the open meeting law, and it basically, the Planning Commission, the open meeting law was recently redone in Vermont, and now it has 2 categories, advisory and non-advisory. The non-advisory boards are decision making. The Planning Commission is an advisory board because you make recommendations to the select board. And so we have certain rules as an advisory board. Let's see. So as an advisory board, we can hold remote-only meetings. We have to give notice to the public as to how they can participate in the meeting. So that would be this Zoom. So every agenda that we have has the Zoom link. We could hold remote only, and then if a citizen or if a resident asks or somebody asks to join the meeting and have a place in public, then a staff member would be required. But pretty much the town's policy is we're going to hold them hybrid. So I will always be here because that is the most inclusive way for the public who might want to participate. So that's why a staff member is always here, and we do the Zoom. We record it. We're also, as an advisory board, we're not required to record it, but we do record them. All our videos are available on the link from our town website, and it goes to the BCTV. So let's see. Open meeting law. So here's things that we can do without having a meeting. We can pass around group emails to schedule a meeting. You can be at a non-business gathering, so if 4 of you are at a social event, as long as you're not talking planning commission building business, you're not in violation of open meeting law. We can do group emails to organize the agenda. I can distribute materials, or you could share materials as well with each other. Word of caution on that, we'll get to that. We could do training programs, we could be at media events together, but again, we just can't be talking community, planning commission business. If we're doing group emails, I prefer that I like to control them and then have you not reply all, because if it does dip into planning commission business, then that is subject to open meeting law, and then I'm gonna need to, maintain the records and have them handy. So sometimes, you'll see me send something out. I don't even like the group response on when you're available to something. It's just, so if you get a group email that you're all on there, please try not to reply all. That's a good way to not violate open meeting law. Similarly, if you're in social media and you're all like on a group page and you're all discussing things that are planning commission business, that's a no-no. You can do your own social media and things like that, but if you're all on some group chat having conversations about planning commission business, that would be a violation of open meeting law. And we don't do any group editing on like a shared drive anymore, because that could be a violation of open meeting law. It's just difficult to keep track and make those records available. For a while, we did use a shared Google Drive that the public had access to, but we never group edited documents. So right now, all of our meeting materials are on the town website, and we don't do file sharing or group editing in any other way. There's requirements around posting of agendas. Staff takes care of that. We need to post our agendas in 3 public places, and we need to put them on the town website. We do that. In terms of our agendas, we can table or postpone items on our meeting agendas. There's more strict standards for adding items to agendas while you're at the meeting. The law says that they can only be added as the first order of business at that meeting, but VLCT, Vermont League of Cities and Towns, recommends that's not even a good idea, so we should be posting it 24 hours ahead if we're gonna add something. So if you've got something that's really critical, get in touch with the chair and myself, ideally 24 hours before, so we can amend the agenda. Otherwise, we're probably gonna ask you to wait until the next meeting. We just don't want to get run into a foul of that. Minutes, we do take the minutes. We are required to post them 5 calendar days after the meeting. We put them on the town website. That's it about open meeting law.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Yeah. One question, Tom. Now, I don't know if that's on. If we spoke about conflicts or recluses ourselves, if something does come up or there is some information that needs to be divulged, is that something that we do here, or just like DRB and certain other committees?
So we don't ask, like the DRB, because it's a quasi judicial hearing, and they're making decisions. I think they ask for conflict of interest up front if anybody has a need to recuse themselves. We don't do that here at the Planning Commission because we're advisory in nature. But if there's a topic that comes up and you have a concern for a conflict of interest, then you could bring that up and discuss it with the Planning Commission.
I suppose if we were voting on a zoning change that affected a property that one of the commissioners owns or something, then potentially, unless it's part of a larger group of other properties.
But typically
yeah.
it's
we don't just do one parcel.
the effect to your interest in it is probably no different than anybody else's.
Right.
So we've had that come up before, and that was kind of the town attorney's take on it. But yeah, that could be a situation where it comes up and you might want to recuse yourself.
Well, how about when we've had the preferred solar siting? Mm-hmm. If one of us was a solar developer or we were a business partner in one of those projects and was coming before us for a vote, you know, on
Yeah.
that tax or rate or that utility rate benefit, you know, potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah, but yeah, it seems pretty rare.
I
I've
guess
never
with
seen.
monetary gain, if you like, with, you know, say for ESSO or something like that, or if you're working for them and the commission, I mean, that could be considered a conflict, right? So if there's some type of monetary, I guess, in a sense, or
Sure,
Yeah.
it could, but again, I think that's more the development review board than the planning commission. But, you know, certainly if there's a concern that comes up, if we're talking about an issue, bring it up. It's better to be open about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything else, commissioners?
Oh, one other thing I want to talk about. I think in the springtime, I had sent you around, the state has an ethics code for municipalities now. And I may have asked you all to take the state ethics training because planning commissioners are on the list of municipal boards and committees that should be taking the ethics training. I don't know, does this sound familiar to anybody?
I think
It's still in my inbox.
It was in your inbox. I think I told you to watch it at 1.5 because it goes quick.
Yeah, I've taken part of it so far.
Okay, all right.
I've completed it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think several of you have, so that's great. At some point, so our HR director for the town is in charge of making sure that everybody who's supposed to take it has taken it, and I know they've done a good job with town staff making sure that we've taken it. There might be a point where they're looking at the boards and committees that are required to take it. So if you haven't taken it yet, that's going to dive into some of the conflict of interest too and open meeting law things. So if you haven't taken it, I can get you the link, or you can wait till I tell you you need to take it.
Did we get a copy of that? Just saying, you know, because I believe we sent it to us to Sally Nix, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah. We'll be working with her.
If I remember correctly, I believe there's a deadline of September that
It
it has
is.
to be completed
Yeah.
for existing commissioners.
Yeah. And it's something to take every 3 years.
Okay. Great, so our organizational meeting is complete. Let's move on to potentially approving the minutes of June 2nd. Gemma, I think you can abstain, or I always forget how that works. I don't know. I suppose if you've watched the meeting, then you can vote on these minutes.
I did not watch the previous meeting.
Okay. So I think it'd be suitable to abstain for you, and but other commissioners, well, I'll ask for a motion first before any edits or comments.
Oh, a motion.
Yeah,
I would move that we accept the minutes.
thank you, and
I would second that.
okay, Gary seconds, thank you. Any questions or edits, comments on the minutes from commissioners at here or on Zoom?
No discussion.
No? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand, and Bonnie, say something, unless...
Aye.
Okay, so Bonnie's in favor, and I saw the other 3 on Zoom and the 2 here. And Gemma, do you?
I abstain.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to the next agenda item. Sue and I talked, and this kind of felt appropriate. Are you okay?
No choking and
Yeah.
dying during the meeting.
Water down the wrong pipe.
So
Stay tuned for a minute, Tom.
no, well, that's I can serve this up. We felt like this next agenda item, which is about our current work and work that we're going to continue working on, and any potential agenda suggestions and future projects, that would kind of dovetail nicely with our yearly organizational meeting. In past years, we've reviewed the town plan's implementation matrix, or reviewed like the recent town planning projects of the last 10 or 15 years and what their status is. And so this year, just a brief overview. Well, I don't know how brief, as long as we want it to be, but overview of our current work and future work. So Sue prepared this couple-page overview, and if you're all set,
Yeah.
I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, so what I've listed here is the current projects that we're working on, and some things we kind of have in a parking lot right now, and then some things that are gonna probably affect us over the next coming year. So our current big project, and that really is the priority in my mind, is the 2026 town plan. So last month we reviewed 2 draft chapters. We've got another one this month. We will be doing a public meeting at some point in the early fall. We've been doing some outreach along the way. So this will be up for adoption in May of 2026 with the select board. So this is the priority in my mind for the planning commission. We have 2 kind of sets of regulations, land use regulations, that have kind of been put in a parking lot until we had a collection of them to bring forward some land use regulation amendments. So one has to do with parking maximums. We did this in 2024. We switched from minimum parking standard to maximum parking standards. We also talked about bike rack requirements. This was external bike racks for commercial land uses, and that includes residential, commercial residential. I think it was 3 units or 5 units or more, or something like that. And so these were regulations that, defined where they should be located, what type of racks were applicable or were required. We had worked with Local Motion on they provided some recommendations. So those are kind of both sitting there ready for public hearing whenever the Planning Commission wants to bring them forward. And then the third topic of land use regulations is the industrial zoning district boundaries. I think we've settled on boundaries for 2 of the districts. Staff needs to bring back forth some recommendations for the 3rd area.
Do you want to take questions as you're going through?
Yeah, that's fine.
John?
I thought we had approved or sent to the select board a temporary measure to synchronize Brattleboro's, and I'm going to mangle this, development guidelines with the new state requirements that we discovered in exploring it for the SIT development. I thought it also meant that we were going to parking lot until the town plan was approved, the permanent solution. Would that be included on this list as well?
Yeah, I didn't include it, but I guess that is kind of a parking lot, the permanent, yeah.
Well, I'm not absolutely sure what, and I don't mean this derogatorily, I'm not absolutely sure what the point of this is, so it may not be relevant to the point of this document, but it does seem to be similar in terms of the other ones on here as well.
Yeah, what I would say the point of this document is to figure out, for the Planning Commission to discuss what kind of things what else, if anything else, they want to take on over the year. And so the land use regulations sitting on here is, are we at a point where we want to bring them forward? I think is really the question for the Planning Commission. Yeah.
If that's a question, I felt like maybe we would wait until the town plan, even though it's a whole year off, but wait until the town plan is done before we add in reviewing land use or multiple land use reg amendments and doing a public hearing and then representing ourselves at the select board meeting. That's what I thought, but.
How long do you think how long do you wait till there are additional land use regulations before you're like, this has been sitting for a while?
Yeah, very subjective. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the parking thing, it's kind of important. I mean, I don't think I would want to wait too much longer. But that said, I have suggestions for other changes to the land use code that I would like to see us work on in the coming year.
What I've heard is that it is, and what I've witnessed is that since it's a bit of a process revising the land use regs, it's good to cluster them.
Yeah.
And so if you have some in mind and I have some in mind, maybe others have some in mind, we might as well work on that a bit more
Yeah.
to have a really, let's just say a convincing set of like, wow, this is really due to amend the regs.
Yeah.
That's not to say someone might not feel that way about what's currently in the parking lot. so
I
to
guess
speak.
I totally agree.
Okay.
I guess I would just say that, like, based on when we did the parking thing, like, I wouldn't want that to sit for more than 18 months without being put forward. Like, to me, that seems like
Yeah. pretty substantial.
long enough. Like, I just wouldn't want something to languish that we did and really thought might be useful to developers. So I think we did that last, I don't know, it was more than six months ago, maybe?
It was more than 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 6 months.
So,
Yeah.
by this time next year at least, like, I would definitely want to see that, even if we didn't come up with anything else, or if we were still busy working on things.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know, I handle a lot of checks for organizations. I don't want to deposit a check from April in August, because it upsets the person who sent the check in April.
I hear you.
Well, so maybe in the coming months to year, we can talk about some of your ideas, and some of the ones I have and other commissioners too for land use reg amendments.
If I may.
Yep.
I have not seen documentation of any of these 3 items that are being discussed, so I don't really know how complicated the proposed amendments are. And I am hoping to find out where I can receive that document.
I can send them to you.
Thank you.
I would say the 2, A and B, the parking maximums and the bike rack requirements, and then the one that John brought up, which is our interim zoning. I don't think those are very complicated. I think the industrial zoning one is a bit more complicated.
Mhm.
And when we make land use regulation changes, we do need to tie it to the town plan. And so maybe that is one that needs to wait for the town plan to be done, but the others could be done sooner.
Mm.
But it's good to have this conversation so staff knows, and so I will get them to you.
Yeah.
And then staff can figure out how to get it in.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, so we heard from at least 2 of us that, I don't know how other commissioners feel, but at least as far as future work, knocking off or discussing a few more or several more, or I don't know, a dozen more, who knows, ideas. Like, for example, at the last DRB meeting, I don't know if Steve mentioned this to you, but him and I were chatting afterwards, and the applicants had a plan for a parking lot, which, anyway, I won't get into the details too much, because potentially we'll all see it at a future meeting, but with images and stuff, we'll be able to know what I mean. But our current requirements for like the aisle width in a parking lot, it seemed like we should have more flexibility and options than just like a one-size-fits-all, because they had this proposal that it seemed like, wow, it doesn't really make sense to, and he had some other ideas himself. So I'll just cut myself off there. John?
Where does the reconsidering the Putney Road zoning fit into all this?
Town plan.
Okay, so this is not a list of, this doesn't include the list of items that we're going to put in the town plan. This is a list of items that are going to be done outside of the town plan, if you will.
Correct.
Okay.
But I think that some of them, they need their basis in the town plan. So I would say if we're gonna change Putney Road zoning, we need to look at that language in the town plan. So that's why I say town plan first for that.
Okay.
Because John, the land use regulations are supposed to have their basis in the town plan. So they shouldn't have things in the regulations that contradict the town wording in the town plan. So if the town plan says like no shops or stores should be in these residential areas, then we're not supposed to have, like in the permitted land uses in the residential neighborhoods, have like, allow a big box store, retail store, for example.
Yeah.
Or maybe even corner stores. So if there's something we want to do that currently conflicts with the current town plan, then we should look into altering the town plan if that seems right. So that way then the land use regs can be in accordance, can then be amended and not contradict a new town plan.
So In regards to the Putney Road neighborhood center zoning specifically, is it the neighborhood zoning details that is the issue with Putney Road, or is it the fact that that particular geographical area of Putney Road is neighborhood center at all?
Was it the future land use map on that?
It's, well, the future land use map kind of, it's a little bit of both, John, maybe? But I think that's where we need to get at that in the public, with the public. What do they really want to see there? So sometimes I think it's the details, and then other times I think it's the entire zoning district is the problem.
Okay.
So.
I'm still a little confused as to what this list is versus what we're going to handle with the town plan in quotes, but I'll float along and catch up.
Do you want me to move forward?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, and then Tom alluded to the bike parking recommendations for the downtown where we should install bike parking racks as another project that he's been working on. I just listed the grants that the staff are working on, and more so because they're grants that were supported by the Planning Commission, but also they do impact staff's capacity to take on and drive any Planning Commission, extra work that you want to take on besides the town plan. So we don't need to go over them, but there's 3 new grants. The cultural plan that's ongoing should be ending soon, the Bridge Street enhancements, and then capital programming for the town. So yes, John.
Sorry.
That's okay.
The one of the things that we talked about in regards to the municipal planning grant capital programming work, I thought, was that we would, as part of that, tie the capital program process to the town plan, strategic planning process, so the 2 of them are integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not absolutely sure if that's required to be on this list, but from my perspective, that's an important part of what we do as a part of the planning grant work.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, John. I forgot about that. That was like 2 meetings ago, right?
Or 3.
Yep. Or 3 that we seem to all be in favor of that.
And then 2 other things that will be coming down the pipeline. One, I think, will probably be this fall, that is working with the Regional Planning Commission on their regional plan maps. That's going to affect Brattleboro in several ways. One, it's going to dictate the designation process. So, we have downtown designation, we have village center designation, we have neighborhood. So that whole program at the state is changing. So we really want to be involved in those conversations about what is going to be in the regional plan, because it's going to directly impact those designation programs for the town of Brattleboro, which I don't expect any change to the downtown designation. Maybe we'll try to make it a little bit bigger, but we're going to really want to watch some of the other areas because it brings incentives in those areas, whether it's reduced Act 250 fees, whether it's priority in municipal planning grants and other grants. So that regional land use map is also going to have a big effect on our ability to get Tier 1A status. That is where development in those areas don't need to go to Act 250, and so that's why we have a big interest. So I think that the Regional Planning Commission will be coming to us in the fall to kind of consult and collaborate on their mapping. And then there's also been changes. This is, I think, a little bit of a longer timeline, but will affect our land use regulations. Is the state is going to be they're basically establishing new flood hazard area standards and are going to be responsible for it, and also in the river corridor areas. There's kind of a rollout of multiple years, but we are expecting that we're going to have to upgrade our flood hazard regulations and implement river corridor regulations. So this is all for flood safety. So that's kind of rolling out now, but we'll probably see new regulations in 2026. And this is also an area where we think we can be designated. We have a very strong record on flood hazard, on regulating in the flood hazard, so I think that we would want to continue to do that, be designated by the state to be able to handle it for Brattleboro. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of a look at what's on the planning commission's plate for the next year, and then, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Cindy and Lindsay and I brought forward that without giving specifics, that we have some land use reg amendment ideas for the near future, coming year. Do other commissioners have thoughts about things that we should work on, or that they want to work on, or feel that they have the capacity for? John?
You should hit Dan first. I've talked a lot.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dan.
Just on the last point on the list there, on the horizon list that Sue was talking about, the Flood Safety Act. I I'd like to be more involved in that in particular. It's really not a new idea, but I think there's some issues, especially in West Brattleboro, that I'd like to see addressed. It might be specific projects.
So if I could just ask you to backtrack a minute and explain to me what our involvement is in the Wyndham Regional Cultural Plan.
Sure, so that is a municipal planning grant that Brattleboro, Wilmington, and Rockingham all put in together, because if you go in as a consortium, you can get more money. So I've been kind of the point person for that. The Planning Commission hasn't had like a direct involvement of that. We put together a steering committee of artists and creatives across Wyndham County who've been working with a consultant. But municipal planning grants need to be sponsored by a planning commission, and so we had there used to be, it's been cut now with all the federal funding cuts, there was a zone agent for the Vermont Arts Council who was on Easties, and he did a lot of work in the area, and he came up with the idea to do this cultural plan to help improve the conditions for artists and elevate the importance of its economic development to the county, to the region. And so, so that's been going on for the past year. We have a draft of the plan, and there's kind of some artist meetings coming up in July, and then there'll be a kind of a more public rollout.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, mechanically speaking, what is our involvement as the Planning Commission in this cultural plan?
There isn't at this point. There hasn't been any. I'm definitely taking I'm taking that plan and using it to inform the arts chapter of the town plan.
In the past, it feels like almost every year I've been on the commission, we have a municipal planning grant that we apply for, and the staff writes and applies for, and that we have to sign off on it, and the planning commission approval is needed. But then, what I'm saying is the state awards it to us almost every year. We've gotten one, and so if not two, because the bylaw modernization grant or the downtown transportation fund. But sometimes, as part of the project, the planning commission's been involved more like part of a selection committee for the consultants, or on a steering committee maybe, or like public input group, as maybe some business leaders or some DBA representative or whoever are part of a group that the consultants work with and meet with kind of regularly. I think for these planning grants that are here, we don't have too much involvement. Part of that's maybe because it didn't seem too appropriate or relevant for the commission. It's also how staff writes it, and then we approve it. Maybe no commissioner spoke up and really wanted a lot of our involvement in these. So it's a mix of things. But we can all keep that in mind going forward with future applications.
I'm just a little confused as to what changes to the regulations over which the Planning Commission would have any purview that this cultural plan would be seeking to modify, that it would even involve us at all.
It doesn't. It's one of those larger planning studies about trying to highlight kind of the economic impact of the arts, as well as, you know, find ways to bolster it.
Perhaps I should say that as an artist myself and a musician, that I'm very interested in attracting the arts to this area and making it possible for artists to live and work in ways that are convenient and safe and just all around wonderful for them. I'm just a little confused as to what this cultural plan even is, because this is the first that I've heard of it.
There will be a draft
Yes.
coming out soon as we format it, and it'll be posted on the website.
And were we saying that the timing is good because it could inform the relevant chapter
Yeah.
in the town plan?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which
But
then
I'm
will
happy to
inform our
share.
future regs.
Yeah.
The information with you. We just haven't had a direct link
Yeah.
with the planning commission.
I guess I'm really just saying that I would like to be involved with this. I just have no idea in what way I can be involved in it.
Definitely the public meeting that's
Mhm.
coming up that where we're inviting arts and creatives, but I'd also be happy
Great.
to share the draft. At this point, it's only been with the steering committee. There were a lot of small group interviews and one-on-one interviews in the fall.
Okay.
John?
Yeah, from my input on the process is if we are trying to get a list of potential projects or strategic plans to work on for next year, I think we should set an agenda item in a, very soon upcoming meeting where we all sort of sit down together, brainstorm a list, if appropriate, prioritize them. This is, again, not to necessarily be critical, but this is a little bit of an unusual process to me that a list shows up and then some other people want to add to it. I would suggest we just sort of get everybody in the planning commission in one place at one time and say, okay, let's talk about what we want to tackle for the next year, right? That would be a more traditional strategic plan process.
Well, if we do that, it would maybe have this list to jog our memories about what's currently on our plates, right? And then
Yeah,
we would
I
go
think
from
the
there.
list is good, but I also have some ideas, not necessarily strictly related to zoning, that I would love to have the Planning Commission work on over the next year. And I think it would add value to my thought process to have the input of the other planning commissioners.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to? We didn't allot tons of time for this. I mean, do you want to be prepared to do that with materials, or do you want to just speak to it? I mean, you could do that now, even though, is there not enough time?
No, I mean, if it was up to me, I would designate a time as part of a meeting, assign a significant part of a meeting to it, have a process, for doing it, similar to what we've done kind of on the town plan in some ways, right? And say, okay, whether it's sticky pads or brainstorming or whatever, we come up with a list and then we sort of aggregate them and then, we prioritize them, if you will, that kind of stuff.
So, isn't this why we have the public proposals and initiative requests form in part too? Like, with my idea, I filled out the form and I was gonna email it to you, and I thought that we would talk about it at a future meeting.
I would say I think that was more for the public.
But it's very helpful. I think it's
It is
good
helpful.
for us to use that too, because it helps you think through, like, why are you proposing this? What's the benefit? What's the point? What's the cost of it? I don't know. I found it helpful.
I did it for when I think I initiated the downtown
And
bike
that's what
parking.
made me think to do it, because
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, we have a form, and I don't know, it seems like a good way to get something on the agenda. Yeah.
I would agree, Lindsay, with the use of that form to frame the idea that someone has. The only addition I would make to that is that the public by nature is going to stovepipe their ideas. Everybody has kind of their own idea that they want to push, and so it comes in. The Planning Commission has the benefit of us all being able to sit down together, and hopefully there's some advantage to taking all of those ideas we each individually have and sort of talking about them together so that we can aggregate similar ideas or avoid redundancies and all the rest. So I'm not disagreeing that it wouldn't be a good idea to fill one of those out. I'm just saying maybe we talk about all the ones we fill out at the same time, all the ones submitted by the Planning Commission at the same time.
So I think what I'm hearing is that, at least from John, is one of those interactive activities. Remember, remove the sticky notes on the map? I mean, there'd be some things like the town plan, which, I don't think that's negotiable and we can move that around. I mean, that would just dominate and be fixed as the primary thing. But we could put things that are on this list and then all of our other ideas on notes too, and have a interactive activity. Does that sound good, John? Is that aligned?
Yeah,
with
that's
what you're
fine.
thinking?
And I'm perfectly fine submitting, the customer form, if that's what the group would like to do. I just think there's a benefit to have all 7 of our inputs discussed together so that they're coordinated. They come out coordinated together.
Okay. Well, great. Okay, we can try to do that next meeting, right?
Maybe I might not be here at the next meeting. I have to run the select board retreat.
Oh, okay. Well, Steve's pretty adept with that, right? All right, that sounds good to me. Yeah, so everyone think about, or double down on thinking about, our current projects and possible future and upcoming ones, and we'll do kind of an interactive brainstorming activity with it hopefully next month. So,
And I just want to, again, I think this is a good idea. I also want to caution you that staff time is, we're pretty much at capacity, and definitely the town plan is the priority. So I think it'd be good to know what everybody's thinking about, and if it's land use regs, they all get clumped together and, worked on that way. But our capacity to take on big new projects is probably going to be kind of limited. But that being said, if planning commissioners want to do the research or the work.
Well, Sue, I would say that would, handling these together would affirm what you just mentioned, in the sense that you could say, listen, we have this much time. The town plan is going to take 80% of it or whatever. You really have 20%. Please don't shotgun us with ideas, right? Let's all agree how we're going to use that 20%. And then everybody agrees that they're not going to submit their own ideas to send you off after we all have agreed on what that 20% is. I would hope that that would be the output from it.
I think also that if that's going to be our process at the next meeting, ordering things, it would be really helpful for people to look at the materials ahead of time so that we can minimize unnecessary discussion or repetition and get more into the business of ordering things. That would be my hope. That we could ask questions of each other to clarify and then
Good idea.
make our decisions. So maybe have ideas in your head already.
mm-hmm. And so when we did that everyone will need to bring their own device, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of it. Last time I did, and so I used your computer, or Steve's, but if you two are in person, bring your devices.
Oh, you mean the sticky thing that
we moved it around.
The digital sticky thing.
We did
That's
Zoom
right.
sticky notes.
Yeah, that's right.
We could all be here in person and do it in person, but I think.
Well, to Sue's point, I don't want to overly complicate this. We could all take the responsibility to submit a list, 1 week prior to the meeting, that, somebody could cut and paste together and use it to start with. And then, as Lindsay said, we could ask questions where we have questions and review it and all the rest. I want to avoid adding too much additional work. I'm really just trying to coordinate our idea input.
Okay. Maybe when we send the agenda out 2 Fridays before the meeting, we'll also say, all right, hopefully you've been thinking about your ideas and submit them by the Friday before, in 1 week, Friday before the next meeting. Okay, are we done with this agenda item?
Yeah.
Yes, lots.
I
Okay,
believe so.
let's move on to the 2026 town plan. We have this agenda item every month. I mean, it varies, but it's about, in general, the 2026 town plan. As Sue said, we have the agricultural chapter and an example of just the layout of the chapters, but we're going to start with the community conversations. Jim, are you familiar with that public outreach exercise?
I am not.
Oh, sorry, I kind of baited you there. I actually, you were one of the people who, in that, it was like 2 months ago at this point, but remember?
Oh,
led
yes.
that, right.
Yes.
But as far as, yeah.
Oh, I didn't think of it that way.
You didn't think of it that way, right? No, I get that. And it's a pretty generic name too. But it's apt. So as part of the town plan, we're doing, let's just say 3 different types of public outreach. There's a survey, which people just do on their own through the website, and I think that's still available to do. I've been mentioning it to people at the 2 community conversations I've conducted. We have the community conversations, which is actually in person, where a commissioner and or staff meets with a group of people and asks them up to 9 of the 9 questions that we've agreed on in past meetings, and then we're going to do a public interactive meeting in a few months. So last meeting we kind of checked in about the community conversations that we conducted so far and how they went, and feedback and questions and lessons learned, and kind of plans additional ones that we'll do, because there's no agreed number that we've set on, but I thought, if each commissioner is part of doing 2 or 3, then that would be probably a pretty good, diverse sample. Do you have anything else to add, Sue, about that? I mean, we can go around to commissioners and see what's changed, or what their thoughts are and updates since the last meeting. I know that a couple of people have been part of going to Red Clover Commons, right?
We did.
Yeah. Do you want to speak about that, John?
No, I think Sue was the one that stood up in front of the crowd and took it, so I think she gets the honor of talking about it.
You want me to talk about it?
Okay.
Okay. I think we had like 7 or 8 kind of active participants, and then other people in the room. So for those, if you're not aware, Red Clover Common is senior affordable housing that's located at off of Fairground Road, and so the conversation always goes in lots of different directions. Some of it gripes, some of it, but they always seem to be happy when they come, when somebody from the town comes and somebody's listening to them. I don't think that we got to all the questions. A couple of things, they really did not like the micro transit, the second shift micro transit going away. It was really important to their kind of social life, actually being able to go to, bingo in the evening, or, to get to different places. So they talked a lot about transportation and, the condition of sidewalks, transit, the bus. They felt really strongly about some of the work that the town was doing in response to climate change, particularly the floodplain restoration projects. They were very supportive of that. They had a lot of concerns about panhandling and perceived public safety issues that they experience in their neighborhood and downtown. They were very supportive of public events and art and music being accessible to the public and in public spaces. John, do you think those were kind of the...
Yeah, the only thing I would do is emphasize again transportation. And the particular challenge they have with wheelchairs and motorized wheelchairs, because I think their comment was there really isn't a place for them on the sidewalk. You've got bicycles, you've got sidewalks, but it's not really clear where a motorized wheelchair goes, which was interesting, mostly because I just didn't think of it before that.
Yeah, and it, we asked them about bike lanes and prioritizing certain things, and they were in favor of it all. And I think some of it is because of the motorized wheelchair accessibility not quite working on the sidewalk. So,
I think It reminds me, I think it was you, Tom, who said a meeting or two ago about like who's using our roads and how we're prioritizing the use of the roads. And it sounds to me like they're pointing out that the roads are being prioritized for one type of transportation primarily, and that perhaps in a graying and poverty-heavy state, that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. That if we have a lot of people who are older and need really good sidewalks or need a lane for their motorized alternative vehicles that get them from place to place, that maybe that needs to be a priority.
Well, I'm certainly all for that. My mother is a power wheelchair user. I'm partially disabled myself. My right knee really does not work since I had a horrible roller skating crash when I was living in Seattle just before I moved here. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely have to have an e-bike to get around this town. I cannot pedal up hills on a regular bicycle. My priorities when I'm thinking about public space are always disability first, pedestrian second, human-powered transportation third, transit fourth, and everybody else after that.
Yeah, and that's not the way it typically is. So I'm glad that they were, every time I deliver for Meals on Wheels, I see the mover van there picking people up for like on-demand rides, so I'm not surprised to hear that they were disappointed about the changing in that service.
Being car-free now in this town for 4 years, I relied on the micromove to get me home from the Amtrak station when I came back from New York City or Philadelphia. So I'm very sad to see it go.
And like you said, if they're using wheelchairs or walkers or things like that, it's not necessarily a service that can be replicated by the addition of Uber vehicles in town or even taxis or something. It's something different.
So that was very clever comment.
Okay.
I also spoke to the Stitch group at the Brattleboro Library, but it was so long ago, I do not remember what they said, but I did give notes to Sue.
You did.
Yes.
I could probably pull them up because I was just typing
And I'm
them.
so
I
glad
left
that
them in
they
my
got
inbox.
to you because I didn't scan them or take pictures of them or anything. That was so trusting of me to pop them in the town mailbox and be like, they'll get there. So I'm glad they did. That's a pretty diverse group of people. Like every other group in Brattleboro, it skews older. And I think that was reflected in the information where they checked off boxes. But my takeaway was that people didn't seem confident in their ability to inform us about the town plan and making decisions, which I tried to dispel. That you live here, or you come here, I don't know, you're a person, you have thoughts, but are those my notes?
Those are the notes, yeah.
Oh, you typed them out?
No,
Oh,
no,
Sue
Sue did that,
I
very
did.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sue, do you recall if my notes that I took, and please be honest, were like legible or too like all over the place? Were they?
So
did you
I
make sense of them?
haven't finished. I did one
Okay.
set of yours. That's why it's highlighted yellow
Oh,
here.
okay.
No, they were making sense.
Okay.
I think I had, yeah.
I guess I'll go next too, since I'm talking about mine. Is I kind of after the first at last meeting I reported back about my experience with the first one, which was that as far as room for improvement, I thought first of all I thought it was great and it went well and all that, and I said that at last meeting. But as far as room for improvement, it felt rushed. There was 9 questions. The only 4 people who were there were very engaged and opinionated, and no one was speaking at length, but just 9 questions, 4 people involved, and just we were rushing through things quickly, and I wasn't. That didn't give me the capacity to like capture quotes like we aimed to like kind of dive deeper into some things and ask questions. I was just occasionally I did, but I was just writing, things down as I heard them as quick as I could. And I thought I would maybe do it a bit differently and better next time, but since because of Rotary, they only allotted me 30 minutes, and there was 25 people, granted not all of them were engaged, but a good 15 were, it was the same thing, but, multiplied. So, so the next time I do it, and I think I will try to get some of my neighbors, like I've said, I'm gonna have the time period be open-ended and not just focus on quantity, but try to get some quotes and delve into some issues and kind of stick with where their interests and passions and are more so than just like, hey, everyone, give me 2 or 3 words. Okay, next person. Not that that's exactly how I conducted the first 2, but it was more short, quick answers, so that way there could be a lot of participation from multiple people. But a smaller group with less rush, I think, will be my aim for the next time.
Bonnie and I spoke to a dynamic group of youth. Bonnie, do you want to speak to that one? I have the notes. I have my notes up here.
I have to tell you, I feel so bad because I search my notes and I can't find them. Oh no.
That's okay. I took notes too. I can.
But my impression was, first of all, it was a large group of youth, and they are very aware and very engaged and very interested in our community and their community. And it seems like one of the issues was safety for them. That I can recall, they talked a lot about their favorite places in town, and I was just so happy to be with this group because they were just so alive. It was very different than speaking with a group of seniors. Anyway, Sue interviewed. We only used maybe 3 questions, Sue.
Yeah, and then they all had the questions in advance. So they had 5 questions. We only spoke to them about 3, but some of them wrote down answers to the other ones. So this is not done yet, but yeah.
Well, what was your big takeaway? I mean, I felt like they really want to feel safe in town. And transportation too, I think, was one of them, maybe.
Yeah. We didn't really talk too much about the transportation. I think that's where we ran out of time because we only had like 25 minutes as well. But because they had a long agenda. Their favorite places all revolved around the arts, though. And places like NEYT because they felt supported and welcomed there. Same with Brattleboro Jazz Center. A lot of free opportunities for the youth. But they did talk a lot about safety in the downtown and how, as you get older at New England Youth Theater, you get off-campus privileges, and that doesn't happen the way that it used to anymore. They do have to be guided. So they were big into the arts and any place where they were welcomed. And it was an inclusive environment. So that was good. I'll dig into their other comments a bit more, but it was great. I think there was about 16 youth. So they varied from I think 5th grade to maybe juniors. There may have been a couple seniors in high school.
Yeah, they were all just really very opinionated and they were wonderful, just wonderful.
I think for 5 groups that we've conducted this with, Lindsay, did you do the vegan potluck group or just the Stitch group?
No, I totally meant to, but we have another one coming up later this month, and unfortunately I'm not able to be there, but I will say that this Friday at High Tide at 6 p.m., everyone is invited, so long as you don't talk about planning commission business. And so we're having dinner there, and you have to order vegan food. It's a vegan group, but that maybe I'll bring the questions to that group because I think it'll probably be a manageable size, so maybe we can cover some questions there.
But I think for the 5 that we've conducted this with so far, some engaged RTM members, Rotarians, Stitch Group, Red Clover Commons, Youth Council, we're doing pretty well with diversity. More can be done, but as far as, not just the usual suspects. I will say one thing I was really happy to see with the Rotarians too is I asked them, how many of you, if any, have done the survey for the town plan? And it was just deer in the headlights. They hadn't even heard of it. So at least, whereas with the 3 RTM people and a librarian who I spoke with the first time, I was totally capturing stuff that hadn't been captured by the survey. So I pointed them to the survey as well if they wanted to say more.
John and I have, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, please, yeah.
John and I are trying to get in with Families First and some of their self-advocates. I've got to follow back up with Laura again. She didn't get back after my last email. And then also Melissa Weineman and the artists got to work on that.
Okay.
She's kind of got something as well.
Okay.
I'm talking with her about something else.
Oh, great. Yeah, do commissioners want to speak to their any future plans beyond what we've said already?
I wonder if another idea could be being present at Food Works during their open hours. It wouldn't necessarily be a group setting, but just like asking people, do you want to sit down with me for 15 minutes and
One-on-one?
yeah, and
Or
share. I mean, they get a pretty diverse group of people,
Especially when people are waiting in line.
and they're
'Cause
waiting
they
in
only allow
line
4 at a
anyways,
time.
so, they might, be interested. I don't know whether, do we have a timeline for this? Oh, no, okay,
We didn't.
okay. So I don't know if I would be able to do it this month, but certainly an idea. I have a friend who works there, so I could speak to them about that.
Food Works. I mean, in past meetings, we've also mentioned, neighborhoods, and like I said, I'm going to do my neighborhood soon. Loaves and Fishes Board, the Senior Center, Meals on Wheels, Families
couldn't get
First,
Cynthia-
the Root Social Justice Center, Alyssa Weinman, and some of the 118 artsy folks. Vegan Potluck, the 69A Elliott Space.
Yeah, I couldn't
So-
get Meals on Wheels to settle on a time. I suspect that she's really overloaded, as most people who get federal money are right now. But the same person who works at Food Works, their spouse is one of the people at 69A. So the next time we're out for a walk, I will talk to them about
Okay.
those 2 possibilities.
Great.
I could do loaves and fishes because, they're just sitting down there on Tuesdays and Fridays, peeling potatoes and stuff. That might be a good time to just go hang out. I would just have to run it by Ruth first. But, yeah, that's a good idea, loaves and fishes.
Sounds good.
And I would be happy to meet with people at the Root.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll get you the
Yeah.
the packet that Sue prepped, like how to conduct this, and here's the 9 questions.
Yeah, and we're not sticking hard and firm to those questions. I mean, the idea is for it to be a conversation.
Right.
So if the thread goes somewhere else, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you need somebody to go take notes, Steve or myself can do that.
I would probably try to record the meeting.
Yep. Yep.
You could invite another commissioner if they want to accompany Gary or Dan or some other person.
I'm just looking at the time.
Okay, yeah. Great. If there's any other commissioners, anything to add, any plans or? Okay, at a future. Oh, Dan. Great.
Yeah, just real quick, I appreciate what you said, Tom, about your experience with the 9 questions, and I think everybody's agreed that it's tough to get through all of them.
Yeah.
I was thinking, maybe if I can only cover 1 or 2 questions during an existing meeting and just state that I'm, that asking these questions for the sake of Planning Commission, that might be a big accomplishment in and of itself. But I have a couple of meetings coming up, but I certainly can't put like 45 minutes of other people's agenda into this. You know what I mean? Or add to ask people to stay around or whatever. So I guess I wanted to ask if that would be valuable, even if I could cover 1 or 2 questions. And I guess
think so.
okay. And I guess if we had I mean, I could pick my priority ones, but like number three, the attracting business as an investment, or the 20-year future question, things like that.
And I would say whatever you think might be of interest to the group. That's what Bonnie and I did with the youth. We tried to pick out 5 questions that we thought were like of interest to them.
Yeah.
And Sue, would you say that it was very difficult to even get to the questions because the group we went to told us what was really important to them
Yes,
over and over again?
that's for sure.
Yeah, so I think, Dan, my point certainly is you just flow with it, right? You're just trying to get some qualitative feedback. If you get 9 questions, by God, you're a superstar.
I went for quantity over quality, maybe. So don't call me a superstar. Okay.
Yeah, but you had a ringer at that meeting.
A ringer?
Yeah,
What do you mean by that?
I mean me.
Oh yeah. What do you mean
Not
by
at the
ringer?
Rotary, but the.
What do you mean by ringer? I don't get it.
Oh, somebody who's definitely on your side.
Vested,
Okay.
interested,
Yeah.
excited about it.
That I did. Okay, let's move on to the chapters that. An example of the layout, and then the agricultural chapter that staff has prepared.
I like how it's all in a different language. I think our documents are too
More mix 'em?
readable and too readable. So
Faux
this
Latin.
is good. This is a good change.
The grand tradition of faux Latin.
All right. John, do you want to speak to this?
No, go ahead. You guys did. I thought you did a great job.
All right.
I mean, I'll certainly add to it if you want me to, but I think you did a fabulous job. Talk to it.
So we had asked Seth to kind of, based on what we had talked about earlier when we were talking about the town plan, to put together a chapter, and it's a bit of a work, and we weren't quite ready with some of the others, and it was taking some time. So he did this mock chapter, so that we're hoping that you can give us any feedback that you might want to give about it. We, based on the transportation chapter that we looked at the last time, we've got an introduction. This is a little bit long for an introduction, and it'll probably be short, but at the last meeting we had talked about having a couple of the salient points up top, up front, or maybe an introduction. We can continue to work on that, so that would be this. Existing conditions, and then on the next page there's the priority needs. There's definitely rooms for graphs, charts, or maps, some of which are required in the town plan. A sidebar, which he did a map here. I like it, an important graphic. It could be photos, it could be a couple of those key points, but essentially it could also be our goals, policies, and actions. So, but kind of the sidebar layout is the idea. Again, this could be charts or maps. He's already used some photos from Brattleboro. Next chapter, so this could be a sidebar with the goals, policies, actions as you see it. So this is what we have for a layout right now. And I know you're not seeing one of our chapters in it, but
Just to remind everybody, we all agreed that we liked the Berlin model. This is very much modeled on the Berlin format, lots of graphics, same sort of cells and sidebars and all the rest. Yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, the Berlin model.
The town of Berlin, up by Montpelier.
it's the Berlin town plan.
Okay.
It's a consultant had worked on that, someone who'd done a lot of
Yeah, I would be happy to. I'd be happy to send you a link to the Berlin town plan, because we looked at the short answer is we looked at the Brattleboro town plan. We thought it was a bit wordy, a bit too much. It was like 100 and some odd pages, lots of pages, and we thought the Berlin town plan was a much nicer format to use and much more attuned to online reading these days. Have you seen the Brattleboro town plan?
Not in a long time.
Yeah, I would take a look at the
I looked at it when
Brattleboro
it
town
first came
plan, and then
out.
I would look at the Berlin town plan,
Yeah.
because it would give you a good sense of the
Yeah.
juxtaposition differences between the two.
I assumed you meant Berlin, Germany.
And I tried to say it right because I'm always criticized. No, it's Berlin, not Berlin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, in German, it would actually be Berlin.
So I have just a couple points. Totally in recognition that we already agreed, 6 of the 7 people here already agreed that we like this format. However, I just had the thought of like, well, websites have the option of traditional like paper desktop view versus mobile view, but yet we're producing these documents which look good on that screen, but are a little bit clunky on mobile view.
I assumed that this layout was for print, not for a screen.
It is, yeah. But nowadays, probably most people are looking at these documents on their phones. So maybe in 2034, we'll consider
Yeah,
a mobile
it's
view
really-
version.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting comment and a good observation. I mean,
Yeah.
this is definitely, going to work better on a laptop or, rather than a mobile
Mhm.
device. I think the only way I'm familiar to get something to be more readable mobile-wise is if we build it as a website.
Yeah, right, not as
Don't have the
PDFs.
budget for that.
Right.
Like, so the town website, when we
Yeah.
made that change, we made sure that it was gonna show up better on a mobile
Yeah.
than its previous version. We just don't have the
Yeah.
budget to maintain. Like, the Wyndham Regional Commission, their regional plan, they are doing it as a
Oh, really?
website, so
Yeah.
I would imagine that's gonna be more mobile-friendly, but,
Okay. Yeah, something to consider for the future,
Yeah.
for all
yeah.
plans
I mean,
that
we want
do
it to
for
look
documents.
attractive, but we really weren't thinking about the mobile.
Yeah. The other thought I had is that in our current town plan, we tie all of the actions to the policies that they're acting upon or that they're
Yeah.
going to carry out. But with this one, it separates all the actions from the policies, and I think you kind of continue that with what we'll see in the draft agriculture chapter. I mean, it's not something I'm totally convinced about, but I think that it is helpful to see the actions tied to the policies instead of them just being disembodied from that.
Well, actually, I was going to make a similar comment to Tom's. I would like to see the policies and actions tied to the goals. That would be a more traditional strategic plan format.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if that can be done in our existing town plan, the goals are separate, but if it can all flow downwards, I think that makes a lot of sense. It helps like buttress any, when we reference the town plan and rationalize initiatives going forward, then it helps if each layer is supporting each other layer. The other thing, very minor, maybe we don't have to get into it now, but it's quick. It bugs me when, and I don't see it here, but I just want to make sure that the actual documents pages match up with the pages. You know what I mean? Sometimes like the front page is page 0, so it doesn't, like, this will be page 1 in the document, but in the actual PDF, this is page 1. So then when you tell someone go to page 7,
Yeah.
then it's just like, well, do you mean the paper 7 or the PDF 7? Do you
That's
know?
too, I know what you're talking about. That is very techy and I'm not sure how,
If
I
you
don't
just,
know how, but Seth might know.
yeah, instead of like Roman numeral pages and then number 1 is later, just the first page is page 1,
Yeah.
and just.
Honestly, the only thing that immediately came to mind to me was the fact that it's laid out in a landscape format. And as I said, when I opened this up, I assumed that this was for print, and I was thinking, why is it in a landscape format, which is suboptimal for reading in the hand? That's why most books are in a portrait format. But there's not necessarily anything wrong with a landscape format. It does lend itself better to presenting certain types of information. Other than that, it just, minor things, nitpicky things. One thing I will say is, since Tom brought that up about having goals, policies, and actions the way that they're laid out on this page, they're taking up a quarter of the page. And it seems to me that that ought to be the focus of the page, not a sidebar. But again, we're just talking about this really in theory right now. There's no actual text here. And I would have much more substantive criticisms if I were looking at the actual document. And then finally, I have to say, just from a graphic design perspective, I'm not a big fan of mixing serif and sans serif fonts on a page. But, you know, it's not ugly necessarily.
Maybe you should choose our fonts then. You have knowledge and opinion.
But I have to say, I really do like the sans serif font that's being used here. I don't know what it is. I don't recognize it offhand.
I can find out what it is. My predecessor would have loved that comment. He was very much into fonts.
Graphic design is one of the things that I do.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
I think staff won't turn down greater commissioner involvement, but we do put a lot on them, and they do it.
But you know, it's also important to remember that a lot of things when it comes to design really are personal preference and not necessarily a substantive readability or usability issue.
Yeah. I think the landscape for us, so yes, it's one of those areas where we were designing it, I think, for web reading, although yes, there will be print as well.
Oh, I didn't mention that when I was saying that, you know, once you said that, oh, you know, viewing it on a laptop screen, that made a whole lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
But again, just the fact that it appears to be like a PDF document, my brain immediately went to print.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think the goals, policies, actions, I think that when I hear the, you know, if we put them together, I'm not even sure that a sidebar is enough.
Yeah.
So whether it ends up being, you know, more a good portion of a page or, I don't know, a full page, I think that maybe that's something we'll need to work through with Seth if the rest of the planning commission, you know, if we go in that direction.
I do like the choice of green. I mean, not green in general, that specific green.
Oh, maybe each chapter can have a different color.
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I don't think so.
Did you want feedback about the goals, policies, actions from other commissioners right now?
Yeah, if anybody wants to weigh in with that.
About the agriculture and food section?
No, about John and I seem to both bring up and agree that if actions were tied to the certain policies, and if those policies were tied to which
instead of just
goals
separate
is-
sections,
yeah.
the goal 1 sub A sub asterisk or whatever.
Yeah, because the thinking is like,
I agree. That's
Yeah.
that's appropriate and helps people stay focused on how things are organized and connected.
Yeah, I would agree in general that you know, it's probably going to be important to have at least one section in front that, you know, lays out the goals together. But then when you start getting down into the specifics, you know, I think that yes, probably the better choice is to say, this is our goal, this is the policy we're going to pursue, and this is how we're going to pursue it.
yeah,
Yep.
this is the current one,
Yeah.
which kind of does that kind of thing. Okay, Dan, Bonnie, Gary, feel free to chime in or not, but otherwise we can move onto the agricultural draft chapter. Okay, let's do that.
Thanks for the feedback.
I guess I have a question to pre-start or preview the
Preface.
conversation. Preface. Thank you, Tom. I was stumbling. So I certainly think we have an obligation and a responsibility to comment, but I also question whether or not we're going to start telling the experts who are doing these chapters how to do their chapter. And I'm just wondering where we draw the line.
You mean on your comments to this chapter?
What's that?
Do you mean in regards to the comments to this chapter?
Yeah, I mean, if the person that knows agriculture says that, you know, we need to do A, B, and C, are we going to say, well, no, you don't? You know, and again, I'm asking this as a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Well,
Or are we
I mean, I think it's all.
comment on some other element of the chapter content?
So, well, let me explain where this chapter has come from. And I mean, by all means, I think the Planning Commission gets to provide what direction. So, The current town plan has just agriculture. This has kind of been expanded to talk about food. I would say when we wrote the current town plan, we were at a point where we were looking at a couple of the different town programs. It was still about farmland conservation. I think this new chapter kind of brought the food conversation in because there was a farm and food system study that was done with a couple of graduate students as kind of their thesis work. They interviewed a lot of farmers as well as people in the food system. And so that's really where this chapter has kind of drawn the text, drawn the themes from. We thought that was useful. I think that could be up for discussion. I think we learned a lot. Talks about the pandemic. There was definitely stressors to the food system and whatnot at that time. So, but it's ultimately up to the planning commission as to what they want to recommend for the town. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I assumed that actually the content of this chapter is what we are here to decide.
Mm-hmm.
So, now having said that, even just in a brief rundown of this, I find it very hard to believe that there's going to be a whole lot in here that I would say, oh no, this has to go.
Mm-hmm.
But there might be something I might want to add to it. But just broadly speaking, I agree with all of these points here. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's much more developed than the existing ag chapters, goals, policies, and actions are. I mean, it's like 3 times, let's just say 2 or 3 times what's in there presently, so it's pretty comprehensive. I will say though that as far as the policy of helping or increasing affordability and access to ag and working land, I didn't see an action corresponding to that policy. I saw later in the chapter, page 17, 4th paragraph, it touches upon helping affordability and access, but it's not an actual spelled out action. So.
Page 17.
Yeah, well, just
you're on.
Of the
Right.
PDF, not of the thing that's printed in your hand.
I'm like, really? We cut this down?
Well, so on
To
the
Tom's
ag,
point.
the ag's draft chapter, the 3rd page of it, there's an incomplete paragraph, and then in the 3rd complete one it says, efforts to support farm retention through tools such as succession planning and land acquisition assistance can play a crucial role in ensuring that farmers continue farming and working lands remain healthy and productive. So that's kind of touching upon access to ag land and affordability, at least for the next generation. But as far as there being an actual action to that topic of policy, I didn't see one, and I felt like, if we're gonna have a policy, that's part of tying actions to policies to goals. Is if we have a policy and no corresponding actions, then it's kind of a weird policy without legs, without teeth, legs, teeth, arms, hands, tools.
Where are you reading that?
Well,
Which policy?
on the first page, there is the first policy says preserve and expand affordability and access to ag, and then just basically I'm saying that there's no action that addresses
Right, but
that policy.
you read from something beginning with efforts.
Yeah, so then on the 3rd page,
So this
Yep.
is 1, 2, 3.
one more down from that, maybe I miscounted. Yeah, so the
Oh, there it is.
right
Okay,
from
now I
that
see it.
fundamentally. So I'm just saying that's the only part within the text.
Mhm.
So there is something that addresses affordability and access, but I'd like to actually see one or more things spelled out in the actions on that topic.
I think that's something that will almost definitely come up in conversations at the root.
Mm-hmm. Right. One thing I thought too, and I'm not, it's just an idea at this point, is potentially broadening this chapter to just be about working lands in general. I mean, when you start talking about nurseries and forest, I don't know if maple sugaring, I mean, if this is food, that's part of it, but it is getting off the topic of generating food. But this chapter does mention working lands a couple or few times, and it isn't, it seems like the best chapter to put it in. I mean, there's the natural resources chapter as well. I mean, people don't talk about forestry very much, and it doesn't seem nearly as important to people as agriculture does, so I could also be persuaded that it shouldn't have equal importance, but maybe just a bit more.
You don't have to convince me.
Yeah, a bit more wording, or, you know, trying to highlight that a bit more, because that is,
Yeah.
it is, you know, small scale,
Mhm.
access to land and work, you know, using it, and it has some of the same benefits and connections as local farming does, so.
I have actually two fellow high school alumni from New York City who have lived in this area for a long time, and both of them are involved in maple sugaring operations. And I'm sure that they would have plenty to say about forestry and preservation in this area.
Yeah, that's it.
I think this goes to maybe all the chapters, that something I would like to see is the goal of encouraging townspeople to take responsibility and actions for things within each section. So we had talked at a previous meeting about how there are things that people can just do on their own to help improve the town or do things, and I'd just like to see us have that be an actual goal, that we encourage people to do that.
So, as far as in the town plan, the first thought that comes to mind is building off of this town plan implementation matrix, but broadening it to not just have town departments and commissions, but also community
People,
groups, or
yeah, individuals and groups.
yeah.
Because there are people that are already, I mean, Edible Brattleboro is maybe a good example that comes to mind with this particular chapter, you know, taking it upon themselves to speak to the town, make suggestions, and go forth and do things. And especially with the budget the way it is.
Yeah, a thought I have is that if the select board approves something, you know, being the highest body in the town, and that something is this town plan, then all these boards and commissions and town departments can, there's like a chain of responsibility, and like, I don't know, like legal, not, I don't know about legal, but like, if we put Edible Brattleboro on here,
Oh
So
yeah, I
it
don't
would
think you
have
have
to
to put a
be- yeah, I know.
specific group.
But I'm
Just
saying-
the idea of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
like you said, but
help
the-
them woman.
yeah, like
Like an
there's a
invitation.
place for you, an invitation. Like
Yeah.
this implementation matrix includes you. Because one thing that I've noticed is I was recently talking to someone who's very interested in pollinator projects, and I just got the distinct sense that they couldn't necessarily fathom that they could take action and do something about it. That they had to only make suggestions and not
To the
perhaps
officials.
make a proposal. You know, like, it's great that you want to suggest that the town has lots of pollinator gardens. Better would be you saying, we know how to do this, my little group of people, we have X number of years of experience, we would like to help you do this. Is there a spot where we could practice or something? And it was hard for them to make that leap, and maybe seeing things on paper as like an invitation to do that.
I love that idea. I mean,
That's a great idea, Lindsay. Great idea.
we have responsibilities in this table, being the town government bodies, but there could be an invitation line as well, or some other format or way, but I like that. And just one more, you know, way to hopefully get people more engaged and empowered. Yeah, so commissioners, other thoughts on the draft ag chapter, which would be formatted like how we see above that? But the content or topics in it, the tone, I remember those were some of the questions last month. Yeah?
So, to get back to your working lands point, the map that's linked for Brattleboro agricultural lands, I wonder if we, I just want to note that the legend for that map is pretty interesting because it includes abandoned agricultural land, but we might want to have a working lands map as well, because working lands is repeated a little bit, and I think that should include sugar bush land, but that I'm not sure if that's whoever made this decision to include this, whoever's writing this chapter would consider that. I think as opposed to just putting, I hope that in the final version, an actual copy of the map can be put into the plan, or is that something that would be done?
Yeah. Well, of the ag map,
Yeah,
that linked map, no, that map won't, well, I shouldn't say no. I've got a conversation with Wyndham Regional Commission this week about mapping needs. That's definitely an online digital map. I'm sure we could get some version of it. But I've got to meet with him and see what's possible. In terms of working lands, we definitely have some responsibility to map some forest blocks. And so, yeah, I'll bring it up with him and see if we can't come up with a map that meets our needs. Maybe use all those things.
and even if it's only the interactive portion, I guess if you could ask them if the use codes could be identifiable. You know what I mean? Like if you click on the use code, it shows you which of those polygons are certain categories. Does that make sense? Like for example,
I haven't looked at the map in a little bit, so yeah.
just it's really interesting that there are quite a variety, pasture, orchard, mowed grass, hay, etc., corn, and some are abandoned. So I guess I would want to especially know how much of that land is actually former agricultural land or inactive or whatever the term is for it.
To spin off what Dan said a bit, yeah, it seems to me that maple sugaring isn't part of this data, right? But yet, but then the main thing that's considered agriculture is hay.
Yeah.
But maybe a bunch of that is going to, horses somewhere and not actually to people. So it seems like the dominant
We're
thing.
not gonna recreate the ag
No,
inventory, I'm telling you that, because
Okay.
that was set up years ago.
Yeah, I know, that
by
was
the
a
ag
big group
committee, and
effort,
it
yeah.
was redone recently.
No, it's valuable info, but so it's forgetting redoing the data or something. But if we could capture maple sugaring somehow in some other working lands terms, I think that'd be valuable.
I have to say that I'm really surprised that maple sugaring
Yeah.
isn't included in there, considering it's one of Vermont's most important agricultural products.
I will have to, like I said, it was set up by the Ag Advisory Committee in I don't know, it may have been the early 2000s. And
Maybe it's
then
not
it was
traditionally
updated,
considered
trying
ag,
to
and that's
show
it.
change, so, yeah.
Another thing might
Maybe
be
just some
to
data, not a
I mean,
map,
this
but
is
data.
Vermont, we can't be the first people to have thought of this, so.
Another thing
Yeah.
might be to just make a note of the things that are missing. Like if
Yeah.
it's notable that the sugaring isn't included, then,
Yeah.
and if there's no other solution to it, then we could just include a note that that's missing.
The only other thought I had of potentially something to include is some graph or data for the tying of agriculture to the economy. There was something in there in the existing town plans chapter, like the amount of funds or economy tied to agriculture in Brattleboro. If it seems like something can be found that's useful and
Yeah, we can find
informative.
it.
Commissioners, anything else?
Now that you mention it, and since you were talking about maple sugaring being missing from this, one thing that I'm a little hesitant to bring this up, but it is certainly in character with the times, is that I don't see anything here about cannabis production. And I suspect that is something that should be given particular focus.
I would not, so the state of Vermont doesn't consider it agriculture, it doesn't have the same protections as a lot of the right to farm and stuff that you get with the traditional agricultural crops.
I should say I am completely unaware of any of this.
Yeah, so we can look into the data
Mhm.
and see what's out there to see if it's worth it. I mean, most of the cannabis production, I think in Brattleboro is done inside. So I think there might be one or two small outdoor crops I'd have to pull the license in. But yeah, but I don't know that I would recommend to put it under, if it's an agricultural chapter, just because of the way the state kind of keeps it separate.
Right. Well, I mean, again, I'm unaware of those considerations. It just seemed to me to be something that ought to be under agriculture.
It is growing stuff. Maybe
Certainly is.
maybe economic development as well. Commissioners, anything else? Or Sue, anything else?
No, I'm curious. I can't see the script on my computer, so I can't really follow what you're looking at the same time as I'm on here. But what about expansion of available agricultural space for individuals? Like there's a very tiny community garden that's part of Brattleboro, and it's really small. It's not at all sufficient for people who really might want to do some real growing. As I was part of a very large community garden in New Jersey where we had huge spaces to grow much food, and right now the spaces are tiny. The garden is small. It's expensive to even rent a plot for a year. So I'm wondering why this can't be a feature, because with the way things are going, maybe people might want to be growing more food for themselves.
I would absolutely agree with that, and it was something that I was thinking about before, but I'm unaware of what the regulations are in town currently for things like, for lack of a better term, victory gardens.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of regulations around that. There's a couple of community/victory gardens around, some that are run by the town where, like Bonnie mentioned, you can, get a plot.
Right.
There's one up on Stockwell Drive like that. I think there's something off of Upper Dummerston. I can't remember who's running that. And then there's the edible forest of the edible Brattleboro using town land in West Brattleboro Village. But yeah, we can include something, and I think a rearrangement of the goals, policies, actions kind of brings that kind of, that can become an action.
Yeah. Good. All right, we're past 8 commissioners, but is anything else pressing on this?
No.
Okay. Our public comment period. Seeing no public, that's over. And we've completed all our business, so I will adjourn us.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
for
Thank
attending.
you.
Good to
Have a
see
good
you all.
night.
Thank you.
Would love to see you next time.
Yeah, you too.